Well, we come now to the portion of our service where we typically open the Bible, teach directly from the Bible. And starting next week, we're going to do that from the book of Nehemiah. But today, we are doing something, shall we say, very different. And today, I am going to set the stage for Nehemiah by teaching everybody the story or the chronology of the Old Testament. If you look at a Bible, those 66 books, 39 of them are in the Old Testament. 75% of the entire Bible is the Old Testament. And if you just start reading the Bible and just read it through, it can be confusing. I don't quite get how all this fits together. And in fact, I had a relatively new believer in my home 2 weeks ago, and he said exactly that. He said, I'm reading my Bible now, but he said, I'm struggling because I don't understand how all these pieces fit together. And it can be easy, I think, in a church to sort of, pretend like we understand how all the Bible fits together, or assume that, everybody understands how the Bible fits together. And when we don't, and it can sort of be we sort of play act then, but never really kind of get it. So today, for the goal of us, at least with the Old Testament, understanding the story of the Old Testament, I am going to do a walk through the Old Testament, okay? A walk through the Old Testament. I have to say, this is not original with me. I learned a version of this, I think in 6th grade, and I have remembered it ever since. And I will tell you, all these years of going to seminary, teaching the Bible for 30 years, what I'm going to share with you, albeit fairly simple, has been hugely helpful to me as I'm teaching or reading to kind of know where this is fitting in the story. And of course, the Old Testament is how God prepares the world for Jesus. So understanding the Old Testament in some ways also helps us understand then the life and the ministry of Jesus Christ. And so this is what we're doing. Now, I have to tell you that I'm pretty sure this has never been attempted in a multi-site sort of way like we're doing today. So I'm going to say, hey, Cedar Lake, hey, HP. And I just need to acknowledge that this isn't quite as good there as if I was on the stage there. So I'm just acknowledging it, but it's still going to work, okay? It's still going to work. And I'm going to ask a lot of questions. This is very interactive today. So for those of you who are like, I just sort of sit at church and all that, this is not the day to do that, okay? Or this is going to bomb. Like, this is very dependent on group response. Okay, so let's do a test. What am I going to ask a lot of? Okay. Cedar Lake HP, I don't know if you responded to that, because yes, indeed, at the campuses, I need you guys to respond like you're sitting here at Crown Point, and it will actually help you learn what I'm teaching today. So please be ready to be on top of it. As an added incentive, I am going to do this maybe 2 or 3 times, and then at random, pull somebody out of the audience here to come on stage and to tell the entire chronology of the Old Testament here in 30 minutes. And I'll tell you, the less you participate, the more likely I am going to call on you to do it. So one more reason to be robustly engaged in what we're doing. I'll also add, we have a map of the Middle East, okay, on the screen behind me. And there's going to be a red dot that is going to go with the story as we tell the story. And that way you can kind of visualize how God moved God's people and how his work happened in the Old Testament, okay? So there is the lovely map. I do want to say thank you to Chuck and Steve and the tech team. This was an extra ask this week for them to put all this together. And can we just clap for them a moment? Appreciate that. Okay, So with that said, let's get started. And I'm a little brain dead right now. I can't remember what is the first book of the Old Testament. In the front row, Genesis, that's right, Genesis. So let's start with Genesis. I'm going to do the first 12 chapters in a way that you can remember. We're helping you with some prompts on the screen as well. Although when you come up and do this in front of everybody, you don't get any help. Okay, just so you know, bear that in mind. But let's do the first 12 chapters. Okay, so it begins in Genesis. Genesis 1 is creation. Genesis 2, God made us. Genesis 3, sin and death. 4, Cain and Abel. 5, genealogies. Now it's easy to remember because 5 and 10 are both genealogies. What are 5 and 10? Very good. All right. So 6, 7, and 8, Noah and the flood. 9, Noah after the flood. 10, that was a little weaker that time. 11 is the Tower of Babel, and 12 is the call of Abraham. Okay, so let's take those down, and let's go through them again. Genesis 1, 2, God made us. 3, sin and death. It's a sad chapter in the Bible. 4, Cain and Abel. 5, 6, 7, and 8. 9, 10, 11, Tower of Babel. 12 is the, okay, we were a little weak on 12. 12 was the, okay. So now we get into the story here, and we're way over here in a very small named city, named Ur. Let's say it together, Ur. Easy. I didn't fact check this, but likely the shortest named city in the Bible, Ur. Ai would be similar. It's different Ai than now, but anyway. Ur. Here lives Abraham. God calls Abraham and says, go to a land I will show you. I will make your name great, and through you all nations of the earth will be blessed. So Abraham hears the call of God, and what do you do when God tells you to go? You go, that's right. And so Abraham he went, and he traveled north around what's known as the Fertile Crescent in the ancient world, and all the way down into what was known as Canaan. Say that with me, Canaan. Okay, so he went from Ur, came to Canaan, and there he is, living in the promised land. And God promised him descendants like the sand of the seashore. But he had no children, which is a problem if you're going to have descendants like the sand of the seashore. Years go by. Abraham takes matters into his own hands, and he has a son by Hagar, whose name was Ishmael. But Ishmael was not the son of promise. Finally, he has a son by his wife Sarah, whose name was, I can't remember, Bible scholars, Isaac. Let's say Isaac together, Isaac. And Isaac was the son of promise. Isaac had 2 boys, twins, Jacob and Esau. Esau, not the son of promise. Jacob was the son of promise. So let's just review that very quickly. So Abraham had a problem, no kids. He had a son by whose name was, but Ishmael, not the son of promise. He had a son by Sarah, whose name was, and Isaac was the son of promise. And Isaac had 2 boys, Jacob and Esau. Esau, not the son of promise. Jacob was the son of promise. Now, Jacob was prolific, 12 sons. Wow, that's right. Think of the sneakers at the door at his house. They're up there. But there's problems in the relationship between these brothers. Every family is crazy. So, the second from the youngest is sold into bondage. His name was what, by the way? Joseph. Sold into bondage all the way down here in Egypt. And eventually his father, Jacob, all the brothers, all their family, all come down, and now they're down here in Egypt. 400 years pass. How many years? 400. And over those 400 years, they reproduce like rabbits. I've seen like the math on how many kids it took for them to go from Jacob and those brothers to a nation. But yes, they become a nation within Egypt. And Pharaoh, they're all like, oh no, they're going to take over. And so they basically abuse the Israelites, and they cry out to God, and God hears their cry and calls a guy named Moses and says, Moses, go tell Pharaoh to let my people go. And so Moses went to Pharaoh and said, God says, let my people go. And Pharaoh said, no. Let's do that all together. It's very important for your Christian life. No. So God performed the 10 plagues, and now Moses goes to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh says, yes, get out of here. You're ruining the whole country. And so Moses leads the people of Israel to the edge of the Red Sea. They don't go around, they don't go over, they go through the Red Sea and south down to a mountain called Sinai, Mount Sinai. And at Mount Sinai, God gives them the 10 commandments and the rest of the law and establishes a relationship with Israel, a covenant known as the Mosaic covenant, but you don't need to remember that for now. And after that, Moses leads them north to a funny sounding place. Let's say this together. Kadesh Barnea. 1, 2, 3. Kadesh Barnea. And in Kadesh Barnea, they sent spies into the land. 12 of them, one from every tribe. And those spies went up there, and you know what they did? They spied. Because that's what spies do. And those spies came back to the people, and 10 of them said, we can't take the land. 2 of them said, we can do it with God's help. And the people voted. And what did they vote? No, we are not going in. And God said, because you voted no and didn't believe, everyone 20 years and older is going to die. So for 40 years, Israel wanders in the wilderness until everyone 20 years and older has died. And I've also seen the stats on that, like how many people had to die every day. And it's a massive, it's just funerals all the time for 40 years until everyone 20 years and older had died. New generation now is Israel. Moses leads them up to the edge of the promised land, there at the edge of the Jordan River. Moses dies. Joshua takes over. Who took over? Joshua. Who died? Moses. How many sons did Jacob have? How many sons did Abraham have? 2. Which one was the son of promise? Okay, went back to that because you were a little weak on Isaac. Okay? All right, so at the edge of the Jordan River, and this is going to sound familiar, kind of like the Red Sea, they don't go around, they don't go over, they go through the Jordan River and into the promised land where they conquer under Joshua's leadership, the promised land, at least most of it. Okay, so where are we in the Old Testament? We're at the end of the book of Joshua. After Joshua, there's a period of 7 social, spiritual, and economic ups and downs marked by the judges. If you read Judges, these ups and downs that keep going on. How many ups and downs were there? 7. Who are they marked by? Who can name me a judge? Okay. Samson, I heard Samson, so he might be the most famous. All right, so 7 ups and downs marked by the judges. Then the people are looking around at all the other nations, and they're like, hey, why does everybody else get to have a king and we don't get to have a king? We want to have a king, God. Can we have a king? And God said, you can have a king. And 3 kings ruled over all Israel: Saul, David, and Solomon. Let's say those together. Saul, David, and Solomon. Okay? How many ups and downs were there? How many tribes were there? How many spies said we can take the land? How many sons did Jacob have? Okay, just seeing if you're with me. Here we go. All right. How many commandments were there? How many plagues were there? Genesis 10. Oh, I gotta say, compared to first service, you guys are doing great, okay? So we have the intellectual crowd here at second service today. All right, now, something horrible happens in the story, and really the rest of the story is kind of like bad, bad, bad. It goes from bad to worse. But the bad thing after the three kings is that the kingdom is divided, okay? Israel is divided now. There are 10 tribes in the north, 2 tribes in the south. The name in the north is Israel. The name in the south is Judah. The capital in the north is Samaria. The capital in the south is Jerusalem. Let's see if we can remember those. Okay, what's the horrible thing that happened? Israel is divided. How many tribes in the north? How many commandments? Oh, yeah, okay. How many tribes in the south? What is the name in the north? Israel. The name in the south, Judah. Capital in the north, Samaria. Capital in the south, Jerusalem. By the way, the red star is Jerusalem, just to kind of give you your bearings here in the map. Okay, so it's a sad story, and if you read like 1 Kings, 2 Kings, and all of that, it's just like it just, for the most part, keeps getting worse, especially in the north, which leads God to do what he had promised all the way back in Mount Sinai, that if they disobeyed the law, if they didn't keep their side of the covenantal relationship, that all kinds of horrible things were going to happen to them. And indeed they did. Preeminently, in the year 722, it's easy to remember, 722. Okay? What year? BC. Okay, some of you were in high school then. King Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, and the Assyrians were bad dudes. Like if you read about what they would do when they would conquer a people, you would know why Jonah ran when God said go to the Assyrian city Nineveh. Are you kidding me? I'm gonna get as far away from that as I possibly can. They were horrible, horrible people. And these horrible people come and they conquer the 10 tribes of the north. And they deport them and scatter them among the provinces of Assyria, and they are never heard from again. Don't mess with God, okay? So, Judah hangs in there a little bit longer. Not that long, but a little bit longer. Perhaps God's mercy because David, his promises to David. But something horrible happens in the year 606. Now we're over here in Babylon when Nebuchadnezzar, okay, you know the name Nebuchadnezzar? Read the book of Daniel. Nebuchadnezzar, one of the great kings in all of human history, comes and takes the 2 tribes of the south into captivity in Babylon, okay, for 70 years. So that means after how many years did they go back? 70, everyone. Okay, so they were in did you get that? If they're in captivity for 70 years, after how many years do you go back? 70. That's right. So they're here for 70 years, but after 70 years, they return to Jerusalem, and they are led by Ezra, Nehemiah, and Zerubbabel. Let's say those together. Ezra, Nehemiah, and Zerubbabel. And so now we're locating Nehemiah in the story, okay? He is part of the return to Jerusalem, and they come back to Jerusalem and they rebuild the walls, and they rebuild the houses, and they rebuild the temple. And that is the entire chronology of the Old Testament. Give yourselves a hand, okay? Give yourselves a hand. All right. We made it through once. We're going to do it now again, and I'm going to continue to kind of pepper you with questions, and hopes that it helps to implant the story in your mind. So are we ready? One more time? Actually, maybe we'll do it two more times, but one more time this time. All right, so what book does the Bible start with? I can't remember. Genesis. Let's do the first 12 chapters. Genesis 1. Okay, don't put them up until they say it. No cheating here. Creation. 2, God made us. 3, sin and death. 4, Cain and Abel. 5, 6, 7, and 8, Noah and the flood. 9, 10, you got this one. 11 is that Tower of Babel. 12 is the call of Abraham. Okay, this guy named Abraham. By the way, what was his name first? Anybody know? It was Abram, then later Abraham. And I forget, where did he live? It's a fun name to say. Where are you from? He lives over here in where the Tigris and Euphrates River flow into the Persian Gulf. And somebody called him. Who called him? God called him and said what? Go. Important to know why, though. Go to a land I will show you. It's one reason, to this day, Israel is in the news as it is. Goes all the way back to the promise that God gave to Abraham that he was going to give him a land. I mean, this is as contemporary as it could be. Go to a land I will show you. I will make your name great, and through you all nations of the earth will be blessed. And by the way, how were all nations of the earth blessed through Abraham? Jesus Christ, descendant of Abraham, absolutely. And so when God calls you to go and tells you to go, you go. And so Abraham goes here all the way around this ancient fertile crescent, all the way down into what land before it goes up? Okay, Canaan, that's right. They go into Canaan. So there he is, he's hanging out, he's waiting to become the father of, millions and millions of people, but something ain't quite clicking. What isn't clicking? He got no son, especially. So he takes matters into his own hand. He has a son by whose name was, but Ishmael, not the son of promise. He has a son by whose name was, and Isaac was the son of promise. Isaac had some boys as well. Did they get along very well? No. Every family is crazy. Okay, so there's a lot of crazy in this story for sure. But their names were what? Jacob and Esau. Esau, not the son of promise. Jacob was the son of promise. And this guy Jacob, important in the story, later his name becomes what? Who can tell me? Israel, after he had an encounter with God. He limped from that day forward. Jacob has how many sons? And one of them had something happen to him. What was it? He's sold into slavery. And do we get his name? Joseph? Okay. And so he comes down here, and it's an amazing story. I won't get into all the details of it. But eventually his father, his brothers, all their wives and their kids, they all come down and join him in Egypt. How many years pass? God calls who? And says, Moses, go tell Pharaoh to let my people go. And like Abraham, Moses does what God calls him to do. There's a good lesson in that, by the way. Do what God tells you to do. He goes to Pharaoh and says, Pharaoh says, God performs the, how many plagues? How many commandments? How many sons did Jacob have? Genesis 12. Call of Abraham. Okay, all right, so back to the story. Pharaoh says, get out of here. You're ruining the country. And so Moses leads them to the edge of the what? And they don't go around, they don't go over, they go through the Red Sea and down to where? down here to Mount Sinai. And there God gives them the law of God, the 10 Commandments, establishes a covenantal relationship with them. It's a great moment, a very important moment in the whole story. But we move on now. Moses, following God's order, leads them north to a funny-sounding city. What is it? That was weak. Let's say it together. Kadesh Barnea. And there at Kadesh Barnea, they hung out, they sort of chilled, or did they do something else? They sent spies into the land. How many? 2. How many tribes were there? 12. How many commandments? 10. Good, okay. And those 12 spies went into the land, and what did they do while they were there? Spied, because that's what spies do. They come back and they give a report to the people. How many of them said, we can take the land? 2. How many said, they're big, they're scary? 10. And so what happened then? The people vote, and they vote no. And God says, because you didn't trust me and believe in me, all y'all that voted, 20 and older, you're all gonna die. And so for how long did they wander in the wilderness? How many years till God called Moses? 400 years. After how many years did God call Abraham? We don't know. But for 40 years they wander in the wilderness till everyone 20 years and older had died. Then Moses leads them to the edge of the what? The Jordan River. Move dot. Here we go. They're going along the Dead Sea, up there to the edge of the Jordan River. Something significant happens there, though. What is it? Leadership transition. Moses dies. Who takes over? The great conqueror Joshua. And they don't go around, they don't go over, they go through the Jordan River. Does that sound familiar? It's exactly what they did in the Red Sea. Side note, it's the next generation having their Red Sea moment. God's miracle and the power of God on display. They go into the promised land and they conquer the promised land, okay? So we're at the end of Joshua in the Bible, if you're following along. Next comes the book of what? Judges. And there was, it's not a great story, but there's how many ups and downs? 7 ups and downs marked by the judges, of whom in this room Samson appears to be the favorite. Okay? What happens next? Somebody said something about king. The king, the people look around and everybody else got a king. If you got teenagers, you know this feeling like everybody else is wearing these shoes. Why can't we have a king? And so 3 kings ruled over all Israel. They were? Saul, David, Solomon. Very good. All right. And now it's just a sequence of bad stuff happening. Something bad happens. What is it? Split. How many tribes in the north? How many tribes in the south? What's the name in the north? Israel. What's the name in the south? Judah. Capital in the north? Samaria. Capital in the south? Jerusalem. That's exactly right. Okay. So, where did they send the spies into the land? Kadesh Barnea. What was the name of the promised land when Abraham arrived? What city did Abraham live in? Where did Joseph go? How many sons of Jacob? Okay, good enough. All right. So, something really horrible happens to them folk up in the north. The Assyrians. They defy God. They worship idols in their temples. They don't care about the laws of God, and the judgment of God comes upon them. In what year? 722. King, this is bonus, Shalmaneser. That name is very important to your spiritual health and life, as you remember Shalmaneser. But he is a bad dude leading a bunch of bad dudes from Assyria. They come and take who? 10 tribes of the north, Israel. And they are scattered, never heard from again. Sad, very sad. But Judah hangs in there a little bit longer. They got a couple good kings in the story, a couple of them after the heart of David. So they hang in there a while, but eventually they also bad. So who did God use to bring judgment on the two? What is the empire? Babylon. Who's the king? Nebuchadnezzar. In what year? Of course, it's right here. If you said, I have no idea, you're out of the church. In the year 606, Nebuchadnezzar comes and conquers Judah and conquers Jerusalem. He even takes out all the worship elements in the temple, the goblets and all the rest of it. Takes all that, cleans it out, and takes them into captivity for how long? 70 years. After how many years do they go back? 70. Okay, see, you are growing in your understanding on that point right there. Amazing. 70 years later, they come back led by who? 3 guys in particular. Ezra, Nehemiah, and Zerubbabel. And they come back to what city? Jerusalem, and they rebuild the walls, rebuild the houses, and what is that? It's the chronology of the Old Testament. Give yourselves another hand. Okay. All right. We got a baptism tank. We're going to be baptizing some people here in a little bit, which is going to be awesome. But I want to do a real fast one, and then I'm pulling somebody up. Okay? Pulling somebody up. Somebody from the balcony. I'm joking. I can't even see up there. Half the room runs up to the balcony. Okay, so let's do a rapid fire one. Okay? Rapid fire, campuses. Hope you're still with me. Okay? Rapid fire, here we go. Ready? Genesis. God made us. 3, sin and death. 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, where was Abraham hanging out? Tigris and Euphrates River flow into the Persian Gulf, and somebody called him. Who called him? And said, what did Abraham do? He went north throughout the Fertile Crescent, comes down into what is known as Canaan. That's right, the promised land. There he is, waiting to become the father of like millions of people. But what's going on? No kid. Takes matters into his own hand, has a son by whose name was but Ishmael. Finally has a son by whose name was Isaac, is the son of promise. Isaac's got how many kids? What are their names? Esau, Jacob. Jacob has got a whole bunch of sons. How many? I can't remember. And one of them in particular has something bad happen. What is it? Sold into bondage by his brothers, that crazy family. And down he comes into what country? Egypt. And eventually, they all come down too. And what do they do here? Reproduce. A certain number of years pass. How many? God calls and says, go to. He goes and says to Pharaoh. Pharaoh says, God does the. Pharaoh says, so they beat it out of there at night, celebrate the Passover, off they go. They go to the edge of they don't go around, they don't go over, they go through the Red Sea and south to, Mount Sinai. And there they get the Amen and the law of God. Okay? Moses leads them north to a funny sounding place. What's the name? Kadesh Barnea. There they do what? Spies into the land. What do the spies do while they're in the promised land? Spy, because that's what spies do. They come back. 2 of them say, yes. 10 go. No. The people say what? No. And God says, because because you didn't trust me, everyone 20 years and older will die. And so for how many years do they wander in the wilderness? 40 years, until everyone 20 years and older had died. Then Moses leads them where? Up to the Jordan River. What happens to him? Who takes over? They don't go around, they don't go over, they go through the Red Sea and into the promised land where they conquer the land. Now we're at the end of Joshua. What's the next book in the Bible? Judges. And how many ups and downs are marked by those judges? 7, that's right. Then the people look around and they're like, hey, everybody else got a king. We want to have a king. God said you can have a king, and 3 of them ruled over all Israel. They were? Then something bad happened. Kingdom split. How many tribes in the north? How many tribes in the south? What's the name in the north? What's the name in the south? Capital in the north? Capital in the south? Amen. Amen. All right. Now something really bad happens in what year? King bonus, Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, comes and takes and conquers who? 10 tribes of the north, Israel. And what happens to them? Do not mess with God. That's right. And then in what year? 606, King of Babylon comes and conquers Judah and brings them into captivity for, which means after how many years they go back? And they go back and they are led by, and there they rebuild the, and they rebuild the, and they rebuild the, and what is that? That is the chronology of the Old Testament. All right. So, I am going to ask right now that Laura and Nikki come up here and do the Old Testament for us. Laura, Frey, come on up right now. Nikki, come on. Would you please? Can we give them applause and pressure them? Come on up here. Just like Israel, I see disobedience happening. The crowd will help you. Okay, come on up. There's 2 sisters. Come on up. Laura and Nikki. They need encouragement here. All right. And by the way, I didn't say this, but at the campuses, maybe they've already cut to this, but Ben and Jared, you take it from here. They are also selecting somebody at those campuses to do it. So, all right. 2 of our dear sisters who are probably going to leave the church now. All right, come on out here. We're here. Don't trip on that. All right. So, this is going to be entertaining. All right. Which one of you would like to be the mic person? Laura? Probably Laura. The oldest sister should probably be okay. So, if they get a little stuck, we'll help them, okay? So you're amongst friends here, okay? All right. So why don't you take it away? I'll be right here. I'll be right here to help you. And Nikki, you're a team here, okay? So you guys work on it together. So
she's very good.
Genesis is, I'll give you a tip, Genesis, to get you going, okay? Genesis.
Tell the story?
Yeah. No, you're telling the whole thing. You're going to tell the story.
Genesis. We start in Genesis. Chapter 1.
No. This is not how this works. I want you to tell the story.
Okay.
And we're here to correct you in love.
Okay. Chapter 1, creation. Chapter 2, made us. Chapter 3, sin. Chapter 4.
Hold on now. Let them wiggle
What?
on the hook. Let them wiggle on the hook a little bit.
Chapter 5, Cain and Abel. Chapter 5, genealogy. Chapter 6, 7, and 8, Noah. Chapter 9.
Noah after the flood.
What?
Noah after the flood.
Noah after flood. 10, genealogy.
11,
Tower of Babel. 12,
call of Abraham.
call of Abraham.
Okay, good. Very good.
That's
No, keep going. What? No. Keep going.
This is all.
I want you to tell the whole thing. You got this.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. Yeah,
Okay.
they said we're old, and you know what? It's the Old Testament, okay? All right, so
Okay, now
somebody lived over there. Yeah.
We're in Where's
Ur.
my dot?
Who lived there?
Abraham.
That's right. And what did he do?
God called Abraham, and Abraham said, yes, I will go to Canaan.
Hey, Laura, hold that mic by your mouth, okay? Hold it right there like that, okay? All right.
Sorry.
Yes. So they come.
Where's my dot?
You know what? Tech team, if you can give them a dot, let's give them a dot. Would that help?
Yes. Abraham came to Canaan. Then
What happened? There was a problem, maybe? He had a problem?
Abraham had no children.
Yeah.
So he took things into his own hands. Hagar had Ishmael. Was he the son of promise? No. Then he had Sarah, had a child by Sarah. That was Isaac. Was he the son of promise?
Yes.
Then Isaac.
Did Isaac have any sons?
Isaac had 2 sons, Jacob and Esau. Was Esau the son of promise? No. Was Jacob the son of promise?
Yes.
Jacob had sons.
He had tons of sons.
Many sons, 12.
Yes.
They sold
Crazy family.
They sold the second to youngest son
Joseph.
into bondage down to Egypt. Eventually,
Did I pick the right 2 or what?
eventually, all of them down to Egypt. For how many years? 400 years. Slavery, 400 years. Until Moses. God called Moses. Moses went to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said, no, after 10 plagues. Pharaoh said,
Yes.
They let the people go, travel down. Come on, buddy. through the Red Sea. To Mount Sinai.
What did they get at Mount Sinai?
Mount Sinai, they got the 10 Commandments.
And then?
Then Moses, they went up here. Is that right?
They went north.
Around.
You're about to get a good tip right here.
Kadesh Barnea.
Yeah, and what did they do?
Land. They sent spies. 10 spies said, don't go in. 2 spies were good. They said, go in.
Yeah. And the people, did they vote? Did they
Huh?
vote? They voted and said,
Oh, everybody 20 years and older, they voted no, we're not going in. They had to wander around in the wilderness for 40 years.
yep.
And eventually, when they all died,
Moses leads them to
40
where?
years, they went around the Jordan.
River.
Yes.
They didn't go over.
They didn't go under. They went through.
And
now-
they went through and into,
They went into the promised land.
that's right. That's right.
Then some bad things happened.
Bad things, pretty much the rest of the story.
They wanted,
Yep.
they wanted a king. Just
Well,
because
there
they-
were
No, no.
there were the
7 years of
marked
ups
by
and
the
downs.
who? Judges. That's right.
Oh, the judges.
Yeah.
After the judges, they wanted a king
They wanted a king.
because everybody else had a king. That's a good lesson for us.
Yes.
They wanted a king. God said yes. They divided into two.
No. Three
No.
kings ruled over all Israel.
Saul, David, and
Solomon. Right. Okay. Then,
they divided.
yes, they divided.
To the north, 10 tribes. To the south, 2 tribes. Israel, Judah.
Samaria, Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Oh, say that loud.
Samaria and Jerusalem.
Well done, sister.
Yeah. Is that all?
You've been carrying her mail your whole life. Let's just be honest. All right. So then what happens?
Eventually,
Some people from
Assyria.
the bad Assyrians.
Bad. Very bad.
Yep. They come and
Because these people disobeyed. And they were
forgot
taken
about
captive,
God.
gone forever. We don't know where they are. These in Judah hung on for a few more years. Then eventually, go on.
somebody, no,
Over here. He came in and captured,
who was the he?
Nebuchadnezzar.
Nebuchadnezzar.
Captured them and took them to Babylon.
For how long?
Ooh, there's a hint right up there for us. King Nebuchadnezzar. This is how you remembered it. King Nebuchadnezzar kept them for 70 years. Then they went back.
Yep. Led by Ezra, Nehemiah, and
And
Zerubbabel. And they
Zerubbabel.
rebuild the walls,
Build
the houses, and the temple. And let's give them a hand. Thank you. All right. You know that was not planned because there's no way they're that good of actors. So thank you, Laura and Nikki. Okay, so hey, the table is set for Nehemiah, which we begin next week. And if you really understand the story, the table is set for Jesus Christ in the New Testament.